Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of creating a mobile game. So in this tutorial we're going to be setting up our project a little bit more with some of the different settings and stuff we can do to get it set up. So the first thing we're going to do is I created a textures folder. We're just going to throw a simple texture on here. And these are the different shaders that you can apply to your objects. And we're just going to select mobile and diffuse for now, just a basic one, and we're going to change the tiling just a little bit, just so we have an area to test our game. And from there, we're going to go and create a little character. So, I mean, you can use a cube, you can use a capsule. Most people use capsules. We're just going to drag that down near the end. But we're going to add gravity to this so it'll collide with the ground eventually. And then from here, we want to go into our scene settings. So we'll go to our build settings, and we're actually going to want to add the scene that we currently have open. So this way, when we actually build our project, this scene will be included, because if you build it without the scene, nothing's going to show up when you launch the game. And then from here, we can actually go into the player settings. So the default player settings are just for Android. So if you switch to different projects, these settings will be a little bit different. I'm just going to drag this over a little bit. So to begin with, we want to go into resolution, and you guys can set this to whatever you want depending on what type of game you want. Portrait, upside down, landscape. For now, we're just going to stick with portrait, and we'll leave it on super wide, scaling mode. Yeah, a lot of these settings you can just leave for now, depending on how you want your game set up. And from here, you can add your company name, so my company. And the product name is going to be your game, so mobile game. And that's pretty much all we have to set up for that for now. When we actually go to publish, there's going to be a couple of other settings that we have to change, but we won't worry about that for now. So now we want to actually go in and create some code. And so we're going to create a C# script, and I'll just call this, hopefully that's, we're just going to delete that real quick. Start. Next, what we want to do is actually go to the game window. So this is what we're going to see when we're testing. And you can set this to whatever resolution you want, but if you want it to be set up so that it mimics what you're going to be developing on the device itself, obviously we can do a setup to where we stream it to the phone. But what we're going to do is just create something just to quickly test out some of our settings. When you're doing like touch controls and stuff, you're going to want to export this to your phone. So default, it's going to be free aspect. Now this is if you're creating a game for maybe PC or Mac, but we're going to want to use 320 by 480, or if you're doing landscape, 480 by 320. And you can also just create your own custom settings if you want by pressing the plus, and you can set it to whatever you want. So for now, we're just going to leave it at 320 by 480, and we're going to go back to our scene. So now from this point, we have everything pretty much set up so we can start coding our game. So we're just going to create a simple C# script. You can name this whatever you want, but we can just call it main game for now. And this is going to be something you can attach this to your player or just leave it on an empty game object. If we go up to component, create empty, you can tag this, let's see, with that. And you can name this something like global code. So if you want a place to keep a lot of different variables within your scene, you can put it in there. But what I like to do is put a lot of code just directly on my player with main game that has like the player controls and all the different settings. You can also separate it. I think for now, we're going to create a couple of different code for the player and the camera. But for now, we're just going to do just main game. And we're just going to attach this to our camera for now. I find that to be the best place to put it for mobile games, because a lot of the times, unless you're using multiple cameras, I usually only use one camera and change the location depending on how we have the game set up, but you guys can do whatever you want for that. So we're going to go in and we're going to launch our main game code. And we won't get into coding anything specific right now. I'm just going to show you guys how to set up some of the quality settings, depending if you're developing for Android or iPhone. So it'll just take a second to load here. Alright, so now that we have MonoDevelop loaded with our C# script, we can go in here and we can create a couple of different things. Now, if you want to set up the quality settings, you just have to do if and then Unity_Android. And for this is how we set up the different quality settings for Android. So when you actually publish your game, it's going to notice that this is for Unity Android. If you're publishing for a bunch of different platforms, let's say iOS or just PC, these ones will only be applied to Android. You can set it up for each different one. I believe for iPhone, it's just Unity_iPhone or just iPhone. I'll have to look that up again. But for now, we're just going to do Unity Android. So some of the things we can use is quality settings. And then we can do something like .vsync count and equals 0. Some other quality settings. If you want a target frame rate, so let's say you want your game to run at a lower frame rate or stay within a certain frame rate. So sometimes when you launch the game, the frame rate can go over 100, or it can, it'll look jittery sometimes. It kind of fluctuates all over the place. So if you want to set a target frame rate, we can do target frame rate, and usually I just have mine set at 60, which is just, I want it to stay within that range all the time. And then we can do other quality settings, such as, let's see here, quality settings dot, then we can do anti-aliasing, and we can set that to 0. So pretty much these are the settings that I use when I develop my games to get me the best frame rate and have my game running the best on phones. So one other important thing that we can add is just screen.sleep time. So, let's see, sleep timeout dot and then never sleep. So this line of code is very important because when people are playing your game and maybe there's a point in time where they don't touch on the screen for a while, you don't want their phone to go to sleep in the middle of the game. So this way is so that your app will be running all the time and it'll never cause the screen to time out. And then if we want to close this off, we just do end if, and that's all we need. So this is the basic setup for some quality settings and some other settings in our game. So we have a basic layout here for creating our game. So in the future tutorials, we're going to go over some touch controls and a couple of different things that we can do. But this is still just the intro and the basic setup to what we're going to be doing for the mobile game development. So stay tuned for future tutorials.